Welcome to Wise Beyond Bitcoin, where you come for education, analysis, and opportunities in blockchain and cryptocurrency. My name is Lucas.
My name is Ryan.
And of course, blockchain is technology, it's knowledge, and the value proposition. It's more than these get rich quick schemes that a lot of people are chasing. We really look at the fundamentals, the macro outlook, and we're at a unique time where knowledge is power, and how we use this new technology really determines the future generations, the world that they're going to live in, and the world that we're shaping today. So we have really great article that Ryan found, and it's from one of the leading voices in, or at least critiques of American policy. And I guess now it's directed more at the financial policy and incentives. But who I'm talking about, of course, is the infamous Edward Snowden. And we found an article by him, which it goes really into detail, into the crux of the money problem, monetary history, and the role of CBDCs, which continue to get a lot of notoriety or talk in the same circle as blockchain and crypto. And ironically enough, CBDCs actually represent the antithesis, or the opposite of the value proposition that a Bitcoin or a decentralized stablecoin offers. So I definitely look forward to getting to that. Of course, this is not financial advice. This is educational information. This is edutainment. If you have any knowledge you'd like to share with us, drop it in the comment. If you like this information and you want up-to-date news on what's going on in the market or what's going on in crypto land, hit the subscription, hit the notification bell. We're pumping out content almost every day now, and we are adding technical how-to videos to our repertoire. So you can see a lot of the subjects we've covered already, and we're continuing to go at it. Without further ado, Ryan, I'll let you get right into it, brother.
All right. So yeah, Edward Snowden has an article out discussing central bank digital currencies, and it's very critical of the idea. And he's responding to a speech that was given by a Federal Reserve governor at the American Enterprise Institute in Washington, D.C., which is a free market think tank. And this governor's name's Christopher Waller, and he gave a speech entitled CBDC, a solution in search of a problem. And in this speech, he kind of goes through some of the arguments for a central bank digital currency and explains how they really don't, the argument doesn't hold water, and that the solution to whatever imaginary problem or whatever real problem is being highlighted, how the solution is being discovered and innovated in the private sector, meaning that the government doesn't necessarily need to come along and solve it. The title is CBDCs, a solution in search of a problem. And he goes through a few of the arguments and explains how they don't apply. And then he wraps it up by hinting that the innovation of a central bank digital currency could cause a lot of potential problems, and there's risks associated with it. And then Snowden his article does a really good job of kind of elaborating on what those risks look like, and kind of going deeper into that. So it's both of these articles are well worth reading. One of the technical points that might be interesting or necessary to understand to make sense of these discussions is the difference between a central bank money and a commercial bank money, and how they're both, what the role of each of these are, and how a central bank digital currency could change that ecosystem, and what that means for commercial banking, or the private banks that we know of, and what the effects would be on them, and then of course what the effect would be on the broader economy. And so giving you a hint of what that is about, the commercial banks are the entity that has a public facing service. So they're the ones who take your checking, cash checks, transfer money, engage in loaning. They have savings accounts and money market accounts, and so that's all. Pretty much, it's commercial banking, and that's mostly digital. So these are not the liabilities in that system for the commercial banks are those accounts, those checking accounts, those savings accounts, and the digital assets are that are there, essentially are their assets inside their system. And those assets are then pegged at a 1-to-1 ratio with the physical paper dollars that's the liability of the central bank. And that's kind of the different how the ecosystem is divided between the central bank, which is responsible for the paper money and is responsible for balances of banks that are held at the central bank. And then, so that's their monetary system. And then you have the other side of it is the commercial system, which is what, individuals and banks, it's the banks that the individuals and the corporations interact with. So these two worlds are somewhat, they're definitely interacting, and they're connected, but they're separate in terms of who they serve. And and if we had a central bank digital currency, this would it would open the door to individuals and corporations not needing to go to the commercial banking system and just being able to go straight to the Fed or the central bank and having an account with them directly. And so and what does that mean for the commercial banking system? Well, it definitely means that some of the money would flow from that system over to this Federal Reserve system, which would minimize the division of labor and the intermediation that happens in the commercial banking system. And this would spill over into the broader economy in terms of layoffs and foreclosures and bankruptcies and, all kinds of, it would definitely have an adjustment process, right? And so that's one dimension here. It's something to keep in mind, the difference between central bank money and commercial bank money. What else is important here in this article? So
it's important to note that Snowden, in his article, he's obviously opposed to CBDCs. So of course, we're going to link both articles below. If you want to read Snowden's outlook on the history of money and the role of CBDCs in the future of money, then we'll link his article, and also the speech by Waller, of the Federal Reserve. So, but both of them, interestingly enough, both of them are not proponents of CBDCs. Edward Snowden explains how CBDCs basically represent the most Orwellian tool of use of this technology. And Waller basically states that it's not an innovation. It's not a financial innovation. It's not really serving a purpose that, as you just meant, the commercial banks that other industries aren't already serving. And by bypassing them, like you said, it'll be debilitating to all the labor, all those markets that are currently provided. And as we talk about, I know in specific knowledge, but the role of knowledge, when it comes to markets and communicating information, having decentralized, commercial banks being able to offer rates based upon productivity in their regions. And we've gone into this, but there's definitely a benefit to not having all decisions of interest rates and value being made.
Right. And the innovation, the incentive to innovate, right? I mean, ATMs and drive up tellers and mobile apps and all of these things we think of as being innovations in the last 20, 30 years in banking, they came about through competition, through banks trying to cut costs so they could offer better rates. Well, when you centralize that function under the Fed, what incentive is there to innovate now?
And on top of that, we see CBDCs being lumped in the same conversation as blockchain or Bitcoin or cryptocurrencies. Like CBDC is talked as if it is a government cryptocurrency or the Fed's cryptocurrency. But in reality, if we look at the way the technology works, digital ledgers are not new and they're not innovative, and nor is digital money. The innovation of Bitcoin and blockchain is the fact that the protocol cannot be changed and manipulated by a few, that it is in that sense standardized and it's secure and distributed amongst ledgers all over the world. Whereas the CBDC is the opposite. It's the most centralized digital ledger. And with that, the rules can change willy-nilly. Whoever say negative interest rates, we can freeze that account, we can add money to that account, we can remove money from that account. I mean, it makes the
Well, it's really a good point you're bringing up, because you've got the legacy system facing competition from this new emerging industry with this new technology, and it was built because of these flaws that people rightly perceived in the old system. And the reaction on the part of the legacy system is just to double down on all those flaws and think we're just going to make even less privacy now. We're going to have even more centralization, more of a panopticon, more control. And it's like, well, wait a minute, if you're trying to compete against the blockchain revolution, you're going about it the wrong way. You're doubling down on all the negatives that this is built to kind of get around. So I think that's a great point. And I'd like to highlight one thing. I don't, go ahead.
I was just saying, we just did a video. You just brought up these papers, but the Pandora papers, the Panama papers, these are just replete with examples of how the current monetary system, which is a history of a small group being empowered, the power to print, and that has led to so much corruption and fraud in commercial banking and national banking. So that was going to be my quick.
Yeah, well, that's a good point. The only thing I'd like people to take one more thing I'd like you to take away from this video is that the existence of a central bank digital currency and the potential for it to undermine the commercial banking system and to basically make us all customers of the Fed, that is going to potentially lead to the end of paper money. And you could have a complete digital dollar, right? What are the risks of that? Is that it could make possible a negative interest rate regime where every year or every few months or every quarter, a negative interest rate is applied to your account. Maybe there's a haircut of a certain percentage about, taking right off the top. So you have $100, there's a 3% haircut, 3% negative interest rate. So now they take $3 right off your account. That is not possible in a world where paper money exists. It's only possible in a world where there's nothing but digital currencies, and they're all part of a centralized system that the government can control and monitor. But in a world where paper money exists and where there's monetary competition, the scope from negative interest rates is drastically reduced. And we know that nations with massive amounts of debt need to have low interest rates or negative interest rates or zero, or, so the need for low interest rates and potentially negative interest rates is there. And all that's missing is the means. And a completely digital currency is the means. So that's it's a risk to think about when you're considering, well, what is at stake here when we're talking about a CBDC?
I dig it. I highlighted, I don't know if you saw real quick, just because we have both Waller's speech and Snowden's article response. And Snowden states that he agrees that CBDCs aren't the answer with Waller, but he rejects his rationale. And when we look at his speech and we read through the speech, his rationale for not supporting a CBDC overall is very sound. He provides very sound reasons for why it's not innovative, why it could harm the labor markets, and many more.
Right.
So the question is where do you think what do you think Snowden is referring to? I know you touched on it earlier.
Yeah. Well, Snowden makes the point. I'm not sure where he's at in the article. Oh, there it is, right there. Snowden says that I believe the U.S. doesn't need a CBDC despite the banks, and yet Waller says it doesn't need a CBDC because of the banks. That's Snowden's his distinction he's drawing there. And Snowden is a bigger critic of the commercial banks than Waller.
And the point I would like to make, and we've talked about this earlier, is that it's kind of semantics, right? Because if we look at commercial banks as private entities separate from the Fed, then that's what we look at in the blockchain world. We're looking at a whole myriad group of private free market,
right,
spontaneous erupting, and really it's when we look at different tokens, when we look at different blockchains, those are in essence fulfilling the same roles as a commercial bank, the ability to airdrop tokens, the ability to print more. And it's depending upon which of these blockchains are the most competitive, which one have the best security, which ones have locked liquidity,
Right.
And price floors, which ones, like there's a whole market of these, but they are, I feel like to Waller's defense, and I think even his speech, he even mentions decentralized stable coins and
Yeah, he
assets.
does, as being part of the innovation in the private market.
So in that sense, we really could lump in commercial banks with cryptocurrency as actually taking the burden away from the Fed.
Right.
The opposite. Instead of the Fed removing the commercial banks, what we're really seeing is this new
It's
competitive
expanding.
arena expanding and taking over
Yeah.
the role in a much more efficient and harmonious way.
Right. And I really feel like Snowden could have made that point without trying to just completely say his rationale was flawed, because if you go through that article or that speech, his rationale point by point showing the market failure argument doesn't work, his rationale is almost flawless. I mean, he's got a true, this is an academic economist making strong arguments using basic concepts. It's not like too technical. It's just basic concepts of market failure and public goods.
It's a great
It's a great article. I really don't see why Snowden would be so quick to draw a flaw with it.
I don't want to, do we want to touch on a couple more points in detail over this?
Maybe pull up that picture of the Roman coins and their evolution. That's a good thing to settle on, or to kind of a note to end this on. You can see clearly over the years what shaving and clipping does to a currency. And now, of course, we don't have metal coins. We use digital and physical paper money, but the lesson is the same, is that, the monopolized form of currency has perverse incentives. The people who are in charge of it, they can debase it and benefit themselves and people connected to them. And it kind of it's privatizing the gains for a small few and socializing the losses in terms of inflation and debasement across the whole society. And when you give that power to any group, you're giving them the ring from Lord of the Rings, and you're asking them not to use it and abuse it. And it's not likely that men will be transformed into angels upon having that power given to them. So this is all to say that monetary competition is important and necessary because of political incentives surrounding monopolies of credit and money.
And I guess that's why it's so important to talk about this and bring this up, because Bitcoin, cryptocurrency, blockchain technology is so little understood, and it's easy for many people who aren't familiar to lump in central bank digital currency as being this new great innovation from blockchain, the best of both worlds for someone who may not understand.
And it's really the worst of both worlds.
Absolutely. And if you want to know more about it and listen to Ryan, myself, and our friend Devin talk about this in detail, of course, you can check out our podcast at Specific Knowledge, specificknowledge.net. And we have an episode coming out. Our 15th episode coming out is really going into detail about Snowden, Waller, the CBDC conversation. So I just wanted to mention that real quick. I feel like we've covered a lot of it for this quick video that we wanted to pump out on the subject. But if you want to say something else that comes,
I think we hit the big notes there.
We will leave both articles for you to do your own research down below. We love it if you like to support our channel in any way to keep the content flowing. Hit the like button, the notification, drop a little love comment if you'd like, and we really appreciate it. It helps the algorithms. You know that we have probably, was it like 500 million subscribers, but due to shadow banning, it shows up as only like 500-700.
Right. We're working on
it. We'll get around it eventually. Until the next time, have a beautiful day and namaste.
Thank you.